Hi, it's a Lipstick Gal. Thank you so much for watching today. I wanted to try something that I have never done before, and that is to build a palette that interests me out of what I already own. It would be really easy for me to go out and to purchase a new palette, but I'm trying to make sure that I use and enjoy what I already have just a little bit more. And I feel like adding another palette to my collection is going to be one of those things that I'll use for maybe a month or two, and then it's just gonna sit there. So I have all of my palettes out that have removable pans. So I have all of the Sydney Grace, well, all but one. Most of these are magnetic and you can just use a magnet to pull them out. I have two of the ColourPop ones that I own. I have all of my Viseart, and there's all of these have magnetic pans that are removable. That makes me so happy. I love that the back side of the Natasha Denona palettes, the midi size palettes, means you can push them out. And then I have my entire collection of Sydney Grace singles. It's a giant, massive palette. There's 88 shades in there. And then I have a smaller palette. I did a single shadow declutter, and these are the shades that I ended up keeping. And so I'm hoping to be able to find a close approximation of the palette that I'm interested in trying to recreate on my own. The palette is the Gilded Flora palette from Milani. I'm gonna pop a picture up there for you. This idea is not a new idea. I've seen a couple of other YouTubers do this. I know that Lauren May Beauty does this and Hannah Louise Poston do this, but I'm sure there's a ton of other people who do this, and it's not a new idea. It's definitely not my idea. I will link both Lauren and Hannah's YouTube channels down below, but I like the idea of using what I have to get a different eyeshadow look, and being able to remove and rearrange kind of excites me, slightly terrifies me. What if I break an eyeshadow palette pan and it's part of an existing palette and then it's gone? I would try and repress it, but sometimes it doesn't work. Okay, let's just start and see where we end up. After going through all of my eyeshadows that I could pull out of palettes, these were the ones that I felt were the closest. Now, this is not going to be an exact duplicate palette. What I'm looking for is to kind of evoke the idea, to kind of scratch that itch, if you will, of products that have been intriguing me, color stories that are interesting, and using what I have here already to evoke a similar feel. All right, I'm going to start at the top. That first shade in the upper left-hand corner, I think the only one that I had that seemed similar is this one here. This is a Viseart shade. This one here is from the Cashmerie palette, but it is kind of like a really soft, kind of almost pearl color. And so I'm gonna put this one as that top one on the upper left. The next shade in the palette is one that I'm trying to figure out kind of where to go with this, because it feels a little bit like a pink, but it's not too pink. I don't know how to explain this. I think I'm gonna say that these guys, I'm gonna move these guys to the side over here, that these guys here are the closest ones that kind of evoke that idea. The first one I pulled is this one. This is from the Paris Edit by Viseart, and it looks like this. This is kind of a soft, almost cooler pink. This one here is from Makeup Geek. This one is Nostalgic. I feel like this one's too light. No, we're gonna say that one doesn't work. This one here is from Sydney Grace. This is from the new Be Mine palette. This is the shade Flirty. Ooh. Oh, you're pretty. Having a hard time focusing here. Sorry, guys. I don't know, maybe that one. I feel like this one might be too dark. This is another one from Sydney Grace. This one's called The Ballet, and it looks like this. This might be a good contender for something else. And the other one I have here is Shine Bright by Sydney Grace, and this is one that was part of the Raspberry Kiss bundle, and it looks like this. But I feel like this shade here and this shade here are definitely on the darker side. So I'm gonna go with the one from the Be Mine palette called Flirty, and we will put this one in the palette. I'm gonna pull some to the side. I felt like these guys here were the ones that kind of really gave me the feeling of the third one in the palette on the top row. And I'm looking for something that is really rather gold. This one is from the Paris Love Letter. It seems kind of similar to that first shade, but this one has a little bit more yellow to it. Actually, this one here might be a good one. And this one is from the Going Coconuts palette. That might be too deep. I think I'm going to go with this one here. This is one from Viseart from the Petits Bullion palette, the black one with all the golds. I'm going to throw this one in. So that yellow shade in this palette, I feel is kind of like a mix between these two. This one here is too light. This one here is too dark and golden. It's somewhere between the two. And part of me feels like if I were to like use these two together, you know, start a layer of this and then add a layer of this over, would that kind of help build that slightly soft yellow that I'm looking for? Do I put them both in the palette? Yeah, I think I'm going to. These, by the way, are from the Viseart Grande Pro 3. And this is a yellow shade I have never before used. This is the only kind of lavender type shade I have in my collection. I actually pulled it from the Sydney Grace Tiny Marvels palette, the collab with Mel Thompson. This is the shade Jewel Bee and is a really pretty pastel-y lavender color. So since it's the only one I have that's even remotely close, this one's going in. These were the shades here. Boy, I am making a mess all over this table, aren't I? Thanks for understanding why there was sparkle everywhere. These shades here are the ones that I pulled that look like they could be similar to the beginning of the second row. I need something that definitely has kind of a gold but lightly sandy toasty shade to it. This one here is also from the Tiny Marvels palette. I think this one is actually called Marvel. Maybe that one is too bronzy. Maybe that one's too bronzy. This one is from the Viseart Cashmerie palette. This one is, boy, the pigmentation is so different on this one. I don't know that I love that one. I love this shade. This is one of my favorites. This is a Sydney Grace shade. This one here is called S'more, and it comes from the Summer Days palette. This might be my one. Let's keep looking. This is an old Makeup Geek. This one is called Homecoming. I don't know, that one looks interesting. It's a little cooler. I don't know that I like that one as much. And then again, one that I tried for another one before. This one here is the ColourPop from the Going Coconuts palette. This one, ooh, oh, she's pretty. This one is the shade Cocoa Rush. So I'm kind of deciding between this one and this one right here. I think this one wins out. That's the shade right here. This is from the Sydney Grace Summer Days palette. This one is called S'mores. The second shade in this palette is a brown, but it has kind of like a warm lean. This one really looks more orange, but I think it could be because what it's close to. I feel like this one's too dark. All of these square pans, I believe, are Viseart. This one here is from the Cashmerie palette. I'm looking for something that's warm, but not too warm. This one is from the Grande Pro. Ooh. Oh, hello. That might be interesting. Okay, contender. I feel like this one's definitely too dark. We'll put that one back in the bunch. And this one here is from the Viseart Petits, but the Praline one. I feel like this might be in between the first two. I'm gonna put this one back down. I don't know. Do I wanna go more neutral brown or a little bit more warmer? I feel like the reason I would want maybe this one is there are some kind of warm rusty tones on the bottom. I think I'm gonna go for this one here from the Grande Pro 3 palette, just because it has that much warmer lean to it. Oh, the middle shade of the palette is the one where I run into problems because I don't wear a lot of pink eyeshadow. And I know these really aren't reading pink. This one's maybe more of a mauve shade. This one is kind of like a warmer shade. And this one here is a little, it's really washed out, but it does look a little bit pink in the pan. But let me see if I can swatch these guys for you. This is the shade Sorbet from Makeup Geek. It's really soft. It's really hardly anything at all. This right here is the shade Sorbet. It's really light. I don't think I have anything like this. I feel like this might be too mauve-y. Yeah, it's looking, this right here is more my speed, and I feel like between these two, this one's definitely not gonna work. But between these two, I feel like this shade here in Sorbet is definitely more of that idea in pink tone than this one here. This is Cupcake from Makeup Geek. I don't know. Cupcake definitely has more of a neutrally mauve tone to it. I think I'm gonna go with Sorbet. That fourth shade in the second row is a interesting shade. It has a little bit of warmth to it. It does have a little bit of a pink shift to it. Most of these round pans here, this one is Blushing Peach from Sydney Grace. This is another Sydney Grace. This one's called Aspire. This is from the Chase Your Dreams palette. This one here is a little bit more pink. This one's called Lucky Peach. That one looks pretty good. And I have this one here. This one's from Sydney Grace. This one's called The Ballet. I think this shade right here in Lucky Peach is going to be the one that fits the best. It is a little pinky, a little peachy, and I think it'll work well with what we have going on in this palette. The purple at the end of the second row was the hardest for me. This is not a shade that I regularly keep in my collection, that I even reach for. So this one might be the hardest. This one looked like it might work. This is kind of like a silvery lavender shade, and this one is from the Viseart Paris Love Letter palette. This is one here that I wasn't sure that I wanted to pull out, but I thought I might anyway. This is from the Chase Your Dreams palette by Sydney Grace. It definitely has a lot more depth to it, and it could bring in more of a deepness to the overall look. This is one of my favorite shades from Sydney Grace. It's a duochrome called Winter Garden. It's very much a different type of shade, but I don't know. I'm kind of going between these two right now. Let's swatch the rest. This one definitely feels like it's too purple. This one's from Sydney Grace. This one is totally worth it, and it's pretty, but I don't think it gives us any vibes. I think it pulls us to a much cooler place. And this one here is from the ColourPop purple palette. What's this one called? This one's called Do or Dough. And this one has some blue reflex, but I feel like it's a slightly warmer purple than some of the other ones here. It has kind of like a red base to it. Yeah, this one's definitely not it. I'm kind of going between these two, between this one here and this one here. So this is the lavender shade that is already in the palette. This one here is the one from Viseart. It reads a little bit more purple, and this one has a blue duochrome to it. Oh, I'm loving this one. I think I'm gonna put in the Sydney Grace Winter Garden. I think they would be fun together, but I think this might bring an interesting dimension to what I already have going on in the palette. So if we're starting in that bottom row at the very, very far left, I have two shades here. The smaller one is from ColourPop. This one's called Lovely Bunch, and it comes from the Going Coconuts palette. And this one here is a Sydney Grace matte single, and this one is called Camel. And if you're looking at them, this one's just a hair darker, and I feel that's kind of where that shade in the lower left-hand corner is leaning. So I'm gonna put in the Going Coconut shade called Lovely Bunch. So the second and the third shade in the palette are definitely a little bit warmer. They lean a little bit goldenrod, maybe even kind of pumpkin-esque. I think this shade right here would be a perfect shade for the middle of the bottom row. I'm gonna save this one for that. But if I'm looking at the second one there, it looks kind of orange. I don't know. This is what's been hard, is I feel like this one isn't quite orange enough. And this one here, maybe a bit more, but it has a very different lean to it. This leans more peachy pink, and the one at the very bottom row tends to be just a little bit more like a saffron goldenrod yellow. I don't know that I have a good match for this one. I think that's too much. You know what I might do? Since I'm not going to be able to actually dupe it. I want to see what looks good next to what I'm planning on putting in already. That one looks pretty. What about this one? I don't know that I like this one. It's too coppery. I don't think I like that one either. I think it's between this one here and this one here. This one here will be my choice for the second in the last row. This is from the Paris Love Letter from Viseart. I'm gonna put that one in. I pulled this shade from a Natasha Denona palette that I have. This one's called Aura. I'm using this as the center shade for the bottom row. If you look at the rest of what I have here, the second to last shade in this palette, I only have one shade that even came remarkably close. This is one from the Viseart Grande Pro 3 palette. I have never actually used this shade. I can still see like the perfect little lines of the imprint, but I'm gonna put this in there and maybe I can convince myself to try it for the first time. These brown shades here are the ones that I pulled for that last shade. I think that this one here is definitely too dark. I'm gonna move that to the side. And then it's a matter of, I think this one here is a little bit too light, so I'm gonna move that one to the side as well. And then we're down to this. These are both Sydney Grace singles. This one's a little darker and deeper. This one has a little bit of, almost of a pink lean to it. And I know it's hard to say that when you're looking at a brown shadow, but this one, maybe we need to swatch them on the back of the hand here. I don't know if you're looking at them. I think I'm gonna go with this one here. It's not quite as deep as this one. I think I'm gonna take this one. This one, by the way, is the shade Keep Smiling. This was part of the Raspberry Kiss bundle. This one's going in my palette. I'm gonna take a minute to wash my hands because we're a mess, and put all of the rest of these shades away, and then I'll come back and we'll swatch the palette and show you what it looks like. I finally got everything put together and I put it in here. You'll notice there's one extra in the top row here. These two yellows I decided to keep because combining them kind of gave me the feel of the yellow in the palette from Milani. It's definitely different. It's not exactly the same. Here are the swatches. This is that top row. I wish I had something that was a little pinker than this. I do have some in other palettes that I can't pull because they're glued down. But I feel like, you know, all of these would be interesting. And if I need a little bit more pink, I can pull into this. But I like the mix of metallics and mattes. This one here is Sorbet from Makeup Geek, and it's very close to my skin tone. And it's a really kind of soft peachy pink shade. It's the closest thing that I have because I really, until recently, have not been loving peach eyeshadow. The very last row is over here. The darkest brown, kind of more that raspberry tone. And then these warmer neutrals over here. So these are the shadows that I'm going to be using. I don't know, this one's really fun because it's a duochrome. I don't know if it's close because I would have to go and get the other palette and swatch it, and that's what I'm trying not to do, to get something that evokes the same idea, and I feel like I kind of have that going on here. I think this is a really fun idea. My goal is to get to know my eyeshadows better, and I like that, you know, so many brands let you pull the pans out because they're put in there with magnets. That is brilliant to me. And I'm going to be really interested, especially to see if I can combine like these shades here, because that really is feeling very springy. This shade here intimidates me a little bit, but you know, it might be fun. It might be fun. We'll see where we end up. Thank you so much for watching today. I am excited to see what happens, and I'm hoping that this palette will give me some fun options, especially as we kick into spring. I definitely have that desire for, you know, warmth and sunshine and tulips and daffodils and all of that, and these colors definitely feel very spring to me. I would love to know the eyeshadow palettes that have been released recently that you've been thinking about, the ones that you've been curious about, the ones that you're like, don't buy it, don't buy it. You've got something similar to that in your collection already. Let me know what those are in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching and playing with my eyeshadows with me today, and have a great day, and I'll see you again soon.